Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub. And the Israeli-Palestinian conflict aside, what's the most disturbing issue for many American Jews when it comes to their relationship to the State of Israel? Clearly, it's the disconnect between the Orthodox establishment of the most Haredi political parties in the Israeli parliament and the expressions of Judaism and its validity, not to mention funding. Officially, there is no Jewish pluralism in the State of Israel. And I say officially because obviously there are non-Orthodox rabbis, synagogues, communities in Israel, Reform, Masorti, which represents conservative Judaism in Israel. And it's important to remember, and I feel this needs to be said repeatedly, when a non-Orthodox Jew visits Israel, from the time that Jew steps foot on Israeli soil till the moment that Jew boards a plane for the return trip, that Jew will, by and large, not experience one moment of discomfort because of his non-Orthodoxy. It will not be a factor in any personal relationship or, for that matter, institutional relationship. But when it comes to Jewish status, including the definition of who is a Jew in the State of Israel, and whether a convert's conversion is recognized by the Israeli establishment. When it comes to Jewish life cycle events, birth, marriage, divorce, a funeral, the Orthodox chief rabbinate is in total control, and non-Orthodox rabbis and non-Orthodox Judaism is treated with disdain, if not contempt. The symbol of this tension and conflict is most visible at the Western Wall, what's become the holiest place in the Jewish world and the symbol of Israel's being, the center of Jewish life today. The Western Wall has become an iconic picture engraved on Jewish consciousness. And of course, it's been defined by Israeli law and practice as an Orthodox shul. So there's a mechitza, a separating wall, creating the large men's section on one side and a smaller women's section on the other. And non-Orthodox expressions of Jewish practice are virtually forbidden. It's not simply that men and women don't stand together. Women may not read the Torah on the women's side of the mechitza. There seemed to have been a compromise worked out by Natan Sharansky, who convinced the Orthodox leadership to permit the construction of a third section at the wall, an egalitarian section where men and women could stand together, where girls could celebrate becoming a bat mitzvah together, where women could lead a service or read the Torah. The Reform, Conservative, and Reconstructionist communities in America were heartened by the Sharansky compromise of this building of a third section of the wall under what's known as Robinson's Arch. But at the last moment, the compromise collapsed as the Orthodox parties in the Knesset insisted that there be a separate entrance to the egalitarian section to mark the fact that this third section was not really part of the official Western Wall. And when the entire agreement collapsed, and the Prime Minister chose not to blow his coalition and lose his government over this issue, non-Orthodox Jewish leaders in America were livid. And that's basically where things stand today. There are many American Jews who feel that Israel, the country, has turned its back on the vast majority of non-Orthodox Jews of this country. And more, there's a concern over the nature, the tone of the relationship between American Jewry and the State of Israel. Well, on this edition of L'Chaim, what a joy it is for me to be able to welcome back to this table a man who's in the forefront of dealing with all of the issues of Jewish pluralism in the state of Israel and the American Jewish-Israel relationship, Uri Regev, an Israeli Reform rabbi who serves as president and CEO of HIDDUSH, an organization devoted to promoting religious freedom, religious equality, and non-Orthodox expressions of Judaism in Israel. And let me tell you just a little bit about Uri Regev's most impressive career. Prior to his work with HIDDUSH, Uri Regev, who also has a law degree from Tel Aviv University, served as executive director and legal counsel of the Reform Movement's Israel Religious Action Center, and served as president of the World Union for Progressive Judaism, the international umbrella organization for Reform and Reconstructionist Judaism. Uri Regev is also one of the founders of B'Tselem, the somewhat controversial Israeli NGO that monitors and reports on human rights violations directed at Palestinians on the West Bank and in Gaza, committed by the IDF and by the Israeli government. And it's been too long, my friend. It is so wonderful. It was so wonderful to have you back here at JBS on L'chaim. Thank you so very much for making the time once again for me.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be back. And I guess for me, it's a Shechayanu moment. These are new lodgings.
Yes. You're visiting our new studios, which haven't really even been inaugurated formally, but you're here, and that gives it a certain sense of texture. Thank you so much. We've met before. People who've seen the programs know something about you, so I want to do this in summary form. Who you are in terms of your Jewish background. I already mentioned you're a Sabra. You were born in
Tel Aviv.
Tel Aviv. And you were born into a secular Jewish family.
Correct.
Okay. And at what point you come to America on a visit? Was it birthright?
No.
What was it?
This was pre-birthright.
Yeah, that's true. What was it?
This was an exchange program.
Yes.
That brought me here at the age of 16 for 6 months, living with a family in the San Fernando Valley, studying in a high school, going to camp, all under the auspices of the Reform Movement. And as a native-born secular Israeli, it really opened my eyes. Not that I loved everything I saw,
yes,
but the path was something that I felt was as relevant to me as an Israeli Jew seeking meaning as it has been for American Jews.
Okay. I want to come back to that in one moment. I just want to finish the biographical story.
Yes.
You go back to Israel. Ultimately, you do go to law school.
I went to something like the ROTC. I went to law school before going to the army, served for 5 years in the Judge Advocates Division
of the IDF.
Sinai, Gaza. I was the prosecutor of the Israeli Navy, and I have the rank of a lieutenant colonel in reserve, actually now retired. But that's what I did.
You left the IDF as a lieutenant colonel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then at some point, this still young, vibrant, energetic,
still
to this day, you decide to leave law and become a rabbi.
Actually, I never really went into law beyond my military service.
But you did go to law school.
I did go to law
And
school.
and
I served for 5 years in the Judge Advocates Division. And when I left, I moved to Jerusalem and started studying for the rabbinate at the Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem. Immediately.
Okay. And remind us.
And I continued legal practice in creating the Israel Religious Action Center,
yes,
which pursues both legal advocacy
yes,
and,
yes,
Jewish substance.
Yes, you used your legal training in service to the Jewish people.
Yes.
So you say to me that you're sensitive to this concept of Jewish unity.
Of course.
And from the halakhic perspective, the issue of conversion, which determines whether a convert is a Jew, the implication with the significance of that is who can that person marry?
Yes.
and their children are Jewish. The Orthodox community in Israel, first of all, which has a political stranglehold, and there's a political dimension which we could talk about as well. But at the moment I'm talking about philosophy. In the Orthodox community, mainstream Orthodox community of Israel, there's a feeling that your organization does not adhere to the kind of strict rules of conversion which would give your rabbis the imprimatur of doing a conversion that would be accepted by the Orthodox community. And I want you to speak to that, because to the extent to which unity is important to you, those who oppose what you're doing stand over against you and say, you want unity? Reform rabbis shouldn't be doing conversion. Teach all you want, but when we come to conversion, the Reform rabbis should say to any prospective convert, here's a lovely Orthodox rabbi, study with him, and ultimately have this rabbi should convert you. Explain to me why you would not take that approach.
Gladly and easily.
Okay.
Just 2 points. One, I have to correct the organizational context.
Okay.
You say your organization. I founded HIDDUSH as a trans-denominational framework, not because I thought that the reform movement is not doing a great job. They do. And my successors, Anat Hoffman and others at the Israel Religious Action Center, are doing outstanding
Fabulous
job.
work.
I felt that we needed to lay an additional layer of bricks by creating a framework that is solely and totally committed to religious freedom and equality, not just, as you alluded to in the introduction, the rights of non-Orthodox, but the rights of everybody, from Ultra-Orthodox to secular, from Jews to non-Jews. So this is about religious freedom for all. And when there is religious freedom for all, the non-Orthodox streams will have their rights as well. To focus on the battle of the non-Orthodox per se is justified, but not smart. Because, again, what I have seen, and we have just done another poll 10 days ago, Israelis support equality for the non-Orthodox streams. It's just not that important to them.
Well said.
And
Well said.
therefore, we would all be smart to identify what is important to both of us and focus on that. Both Israelis and American Jewry, world Jewry. And focus on that, such as the right to family, the right to marry. This is a core concern that impacts hundreds of thousands, impacts the next generation, actually this generation, but surely the next generation of American Jewry, and impacts Israelis. Israel should accept all conversions done by the established streams of Judaism.
Israel, by the way, Israel does. It's the Orthodox rabbinate that is not. And we should make a distinction for our audience.
Of course we should. But that's really the answer to the point that you made. And why it is, you sort of fell into a trap that they would love to lay for people who mean well. Israel should fully recognize, along with the ability to, for instance, marry, legally marry. Because if you're a Reform convert or a Conservative convert or a child of a convert, you can't marry. Forget about the chief rabbinate.
You can go to Israel under the law of return. You're accepted by the state of Israel as a Jew. But when it comes to matters of family, the state takes a step back and the Orthodox rabbinate comes in.
You're kind in describing it as take a step back. The state surrenders its core responsibility. Why is the claim that you heard and you have presented to me so wrong? Forget about Regev. Forget about Reform conversions. What about Rabbi Haskell Luxtin's conversions? The point is that here is the rabbi who converted the most famous convert in contemporary Jewish world. Another convert, now this convert hasn't made Aliyah yet, but another female convert of his did make Aliyah. And she received Israeli citizenship.
Who's that?
I don't know her name,
Oh,
but her
okay.
case
Okay.
was
All right.
made public
Yes,
in the
that's
news.
correct.
She wanted to get married
Yeah.
because she's a new immigrant. She was referred to the rabbinic court in Jerusalem. Court said, we don't recognize Luxtin's conversions.
Correct.
She appealed to the rabbinic court of appeal. The rabbinic court of appeal said, we don't recognize Luxtin's conversions, and forced her, if she wanted to get married, forced her to reconvert under its auspices. So what are they saying to Luxtin? They are saying exactly what you are suggesting they're saying to me. As far as they're concerned, Orthodox conversions are not good enough.
It depends who the Orthodox rabbi is.
Exactly.
Correct.
So this isn't an issue between Reform and Orthodox. They separate within Orthodoxy.
There is within the Orthodox community a far right wing that right now has control of religious law. The religious is a stupid word, but family law, life cycle law is in control of a very narrow piece of Israel.
Right.
And it makes what I think your point is very, very well taken. It's not just it makes Reform and Conservative Masorti Judaism in Israel difficult. It makes life for anyone who is not in that community difficult. And you and I know there are many secular Israelis who are very angry, very angry. And I want to make sure the audience understands. You and I see this we may see it in lockstep. The difference we've sometimes had together when we sit together is what the implication is for the American Jewish-Israel relationship. I don't know if we agree or disagree. We may agree there too. My perspective is, I have a wish, I have a messianic wish that the state of Israel correct the deal it made when David Ben-Gurion first became prime minister.
Actually, it was in 47,
Before even. And it was renewed, though, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, the deal was made with what was then thought to be a small Orthodox leadership that in matters of family law, Orthodox law, the Orthodox interpretation of Jewish law would apply to Israel. And that basically has been the de facto reality in Israel down to this very day. Is that fair enough?
with one proviso.
Yep.
That agreement, so to speak, which was conveyed in a letter to the Agudat Israel,
Correct.
World Aguda, included a number of points. For instance, the point that the state-to-be will apply and enforce co-curricular studies in Haredi schools.
Yeah, but this, I understand.
So what I'm saying is, of course, we need to revisit it, and what you can see in HIDDUSH's repeated public opinion surveys, which is something we do regularly and in depth, is the overwhelming majority of the public, more accurately, 70% of the adult Jewish population in Israel wants Israel to recognize on equal basis all marriages, civil, conservative, reform, and Orthodox. That's what the public wants. The number of Israeli Jewish couples who marry in the rabbinate is plummeting because people are voting with their feet. So whatever the agreement in 47 was, Israel has now remained the only Western democracy in the world that does not allow its citizens the right to marry.
Okay.
That's unacceptable.
I understand, and you know, I feel exactly as you do.
Okay.
But I don't think in any way you modified what I said. Okay? And ultimately, that's the reality. I want to say it again. The reality is that the Ultra-Orthodox control Jewish life in the state of Israel based on a deal that was made in 1947.
But actually, no, it's not really based on the deal. It's based on the renewed political horse trading, which takes place in Israel in most governments where it is perceived that one cannot form a coalition government without the Haredi parties.
What do you mean it's perceived? It's true.
No, it's not. Of course
Then why does it happen?
It happens because of convenience and because of misguided perception. Right,
Okay.
center, and left. This
Okay.
was in Olmert's government, and this was
Okay.
in Labour government.
Okay, then this is
Yes.
what I don't understand.
Okay.
If you're right
Yes.
that the Israeli people are upset with this,
Yes.
because what you said earlier, and is what I understand, it bothers them, and at the same time they don't care. And if they cared,
Yeah.
then their politicians would have to respond. And I just want to say this, and then I want to hear your
Yeah.
answer. I don't want anybody to misunderstand me as they're watching. I believe there should be Jewish pluralism in Israel. I believe that any Israeli should have the right to have an official Israeli marriage with any rabbi they want.
Or civil.
Or civil, and civil. I agree with you. I believe there should be a third section at the wall.
Yeah.
I've said that before this was ever
Why
an
do you say
issue.
third?
Because there are two sections at the wall now.
No.
Yes, there's a men's section
Yeah. Well,
and a
it's-
women's
it's-
section.
It's a visual graphic thing. There
There
are two sections.
sections at the wall.
There is the traditional section,
There's the women.
and there is the Robinson's Arch
I
area.
think there should be a
with
place
the,
where men stand together, where women can stand
I
together,
agree.
and where men and women can stand together in an
Exactly.
egalitarian answer.
We are in agreement.
I believe Israel is making a mistake,
Yes.
and will continue to make a mistake until that is corrected.
Yes.
I am for Jewish pluralism in the state of Israel, and there are fabulous Reform and Masorti congregations and rabbis in Israel. And I also think you make a very important point that's often overlooked. The secular Israeli has every right to live a full Israeli Jewish life. And by the way, for most secular Israelis, they're Jewish.
Very.
Okay. So we agree. That's our goal. The issue that I always have trouble with is, number one, I keep saying to myself, I'm an American Jew. And I'm here in America, and I don't know whether you agree with me or not. When I go to Israel, although if I want to go to the Western Wall, I can't stand with my wife. The reality is, as I go through Israel, nobody ever treats me as a second-class Jew because I am not Orthodox. You agree?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in terms of the day-to-day life, American Jews who have never been to Israel should not imagine that Reform Jews or conservative Jews are not welcome, or worse, are in some way shunned or in some way made to feel uncomfortable. I never ever feel uncomfortable because I'm not an Orthodox Jew in Israel.
Even more so, they should come. They will be inspired.
Yes.
They will feel the sense of connectedness with history, with Jewish ethnic diversity.
And they'll understand better why this is an issue that they should care about.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
It shouldn't be an issue that divides us.
Mm-hmm.
It should not be an issue which any American Jewish leader uses to divide American Jewry from the state of Israel. And I'll ask you this. If you were a rabbi in California, where you have two children who are rabbis, and you heard somebody...
Son and a daughter.
Son and a daughter.
Our daughter is a pastry chef.
Thank you for clarifying. So, if you are a rabbi in California, and a congregant said to you, because the state of Israel has basically undercut a compromise which would have given me an egalitarian section where, had I gone to Israel, it would be just as valid as the traditional section with men and women. And I'm not going to give $1 million that I plan to give to Israel because of that. Mm-hmm. What would you as the rabbi say?
I'm 100% with you. Israel is too important.
What would you say?
I would say two things. I would say Israel deserves your support, regardless of whatever issues cause us to frustration and cause us to resent them.
Amen v'amen.
And I say you should be supporting the causes that will make Israel stronger, more viable.
Amen.
And you should realize that it's a priority for liberal Jews with a small L.
Absolutely.
To be engaged, informed, and supportive of implementing our shared vision of Israel, which is truly Jewish and truly democratic.
You say it perfectly.
Okay. So we are in agreement on that.
We are.
Yes.
Unfortunately, not all rabbis in the liberal Jewish community are saying it that clearly, and it's disappointing to me. That's my only issue. And what I'm saying, and I think you and I agree, we have a vision for what Israel should be.
Correct.
And we're critical of the extent to which, in my view, Israelis have tolerated it. Israelis, not American Jews. Israelis have tolerated it. It should be corrected. But I believe it has to be done by Israelis.
We should go beyond the assertion that this is for Israelis to solve.
It's not for Israelis to solve?
No. You see, the two options are not, it's either for Israelis to solve or else it's not for Israelis to solve.
Yeah,
I'm saying I believe in a partnership. I believe we are in the same boat. And as the Talmudic story goes, if in Israel we find this alienating policy that turns so many in the American Jewish community away, we are all going to drown. Israel will be weaker, world Jewry will be weaker, American Jewry will be weaker. We are in the same boat. I, as a native-born Israeli and Zionist, believe that Israel is a joint enterprise of the Jewish people. And we should take care of our investments and not say, well, it's for the other partners to worry about.
Should we partner?
Yes.
Of course we should partner.
Okay.
Do American Jews have the same kind of A, stake, and B, right to dictate, to form Israeli policy? I don't believe we do.
Okay. So
here
is an interesting aspect that has not been sufficiently understood by many in the American Jewish leadership. You mentioned the AJC, New York Federation did their study, ADL did their study, etc. And what they point to is an ambivalence on the part of many Israelis as to American Jewish engagement in Israeli domestic affairs. I asked a different question in our 2019 Israel Religion and State Index. I said there are federations and organizations in the diaspora, in American Jewry, that have taken an active role in promoting religious freedom and equality in Israel, such as introducing civil marriages and doing away with the monopoly of the chief rabbinate. Do you approve of it? Very much, somewhat. Disapprove of it? Somewhat, very much. 68% of the adult Jewish population approve. And therefore, what I'm saying is, we need to understand that when the question is, should Reform and Conservative Judaism toot their own horn, you know what? Israelis may be ambivalent.
Okay.
Should there be freedom and equality for all, civil, Reform, Conservative? 70% say yes.
Good for you. Okay.
And the interesting thing is that in the past, I asked the question somewhat differently. I gave different options. Should there be only civil marriage? Civil as well as Reform and Conservative? Only Orthodox? And what happens is that the largest group among Israeli respondents wants to see everybody.
Okay.
They want to see both civil and Reform and Conservative.
Good for you. I'm going to challenge you to add another question to your next survey.
Yes.
What are you willing to do about it?
You are.
I want to know what the Israeli people who say, yes, there should be all this freedom. What are you going to do to change the Israeli political system to make that possible?
So this is obviously the $64,000 question, and allowing for inflation, etc. Maybe the $64 million question. Okay. We have seen Israelis take a strong stand on those issues. For instance, 2013 elections, when Yair Lapid and Yesh Atid jumped to 19 seats and were able at that point to dictate the shape of the government and exclude the Haredi parties. That actually happened before, I forget now whether it was, when Yair's father, Tommy Lapid, brought the party, Shinui party, from 1 Knesset member to 16 over 2 election campaigns. So A, Israelis are capable of attaching importance to this
I want to
issue.
make sure I understand.
Yes.
When Lapid's party
Yes.
did gain,
It was because they were perceived as a religious freedom party.
okay, was anything changed?
Yes.
What?
Within the 2 years that that coalition survived, laws were changed in terms of draft of yeshiva students, in terms of core curriculum. There were 4
What about the issues
four
though you're
bills.
talking?
Four
What about
bills.
the issues you're talking
4
about?
bills were pending at the Knesset on either civil marriage or domestic partnership. And in 2015, that government collapsed. Netanyahu realigned with the Haredi, and everything that was done was undone.
Okay.
So we are capable of change.
Okay.
American Jewry is capable of making a difference, as we have seen on
How?
who is
How can
big-
American Jewry
big-
make a
it's-
difference?
it's,
I am afraid
Yes.
you're going to say we should use some kind of club.
No, I'm
Then
not
how?
suggesting club. There are 2 ways of doing it, or complementary ways. One is support and give priority to the efforts on the ground that are done by organizations such as HIDDUSH, the Reform Movement, the Masorti Movement,
You mean they should give money to you?
and give us money to be able
Okay.
to
One
augment and
is
strengthen
financially
our
support you.
work.
Okay.
The other is give preference to our voices in your communal discussions, in your educational efforts, over those who are basically out to
Okay.
exclude you.
Okay.
So
Synagogues
Steve
should have
Lasseter,
Uri Regev more.
not just synagogues, federations should have
Yes,
Uri
okay.
Regev more.
Okay. I'm going to tell our audience something. You
Yeah.
know, I've always said to you, would you sit with an American Orthodox rabbi? You've always said yes to me. I tried very hard to get an Orthodox rabbi of your stature, of similar stature to you, to come on L'chaim and sit with you. Agudath Israel, which is on the far right, turned me down. They didn't want to sit with you. The RCA, the Rabbinical Council of America, the organization of mainstream Orthodox rabbis in America, didn't send me. They didn't want anybody to sit with you. The OU, which is, it's not simply that, you know, it has, every kosher food has OU, but the Orthodox Union is a major organization of Orthodox life. But when I said I was having Uri Regev, their answer is, no one at the OU feels comfortable speaking about this subject in public. What do you make of that?
Oh, I'm not surprised. And it really goes back. Recently, we, with the American Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists, and an organization that we are starting, J-Plan, Jewish Pluralism Legal Action Network, tried to put together here in New York a moot court program on the right to marry in Israel. Freedom of marriage versus status quo and maintaining the authority of the chief rabbinate for the sake of Jewish unity or whatever argument they are conveying as you have repeated. We went through those organizations and others. No one, now this has nothing to do with me.
I know, it's
Yeah,
not
and
personal.
I don't take it
Yes,
personally.
right.
No one was willing to come forward and say, we will take the stand of defending the status quo in a moot court situation with 3 professional judges in a neutral location. Now, the reason is the only, and it goes back to what we said before, the only reason this is happening in Israel is not because in 47 there was a letter sent. It's because they used the political muscle against the foundations of the State of Israel, against democratic principles, and against the will of the overwhelming majority of the Jewish population to force their way on everybody. Now, there is no way to justify it, and therefore here, where the starting point is democracy, the starting point is separation, the starting point is pluralism, the starting point is we should treat each other with respect and mutual recognition, even if we don't agree with you and we strongly disagree with you. They can't convince anybody.
Are you suggesting that the OU, the RCA, and Agudath Israel
Yes.
is somehow complicit?
Of course they are. Moreover, it goes back in my mind. Back in '93, Congress has passed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Agudath Israel of, US, of America, was actively involved, by the way, in partnership with the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, in pushing for the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. On the day that President Clinton signed the bill, the head of Agudath Israel of America issued a press release, I have it, beautiful. Religious freedom is a fundamental liberty of the highest order, blah, 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 blah. They will say that to you and to their other audiences here.
Agudath Israel won't say it.
It did. It's a press release.
They don't say it to me. But wait,
Yes.
Rabbi Safran is on.
Oh, they do now. Let me tell you. For instance, there are problems in Europe now. There are countries, such as Belgium, in which kosher slaughtering is being outlawed,
Yes.
in which they're considering outlawing circumcision.
Yes.
What is their response? They went to court. They're saying religious freedom. This is a violation of religious freedom.
It's not the same.
Of course it's
By
the
way,
same.
no,
It's
not the
hypocrisy
same.
at its
No,
worst.
No, it's not. What they're saying is the following.
Yes,
If an Orthodox rabbi of institution,
yes,
sits with you,
yes,
it gives you and you, it's not Uri Regev, but it gives your movement a certain hechsher.
I don't care. I don't mind that they will start the panel or the interview saying, as far as I'm concerned, Regev is no rabbi, his Judaism is no Judaism, and I disagree with everything that he represents.
Right.
So fine, get
Exactly.
this out of the way. Say
Yes,
I
exactly.
despise him Jewishly and rabbinically and what have you. Now let's talk about the issues.
Good for you. And by the way, I want to say to anybody who is part of any of those organizations, OU, RCA, or Agudath Israel, you are welcome here anytime. But what I'm really hoping is at some point, one significant mainstream Orthodox organization will sit on L'chaim with Uri Regev. And for me, this entire JBS and L'chaim and what we're trying to do together. And people talk about Jewish unity. It's the way Uri begins. And I believe he's right. But it's also, in some way, the vision, not the reality. We keep saying we're one, the Jewish people. One means we would never refuse to sit with somebody. And Yuri said it beautifully. You want to tell him he's crazy? You want to tell him his Judaism isn't legitimate? Tell him. But tell him, and at least let him explain why he thinks you're making a mistake. So anyway, I really was so disappointed.
Believe me,
You know I was
am
disappointed.
Too, I do. But you implied a very important point which you raised initially and I didn't respond to. I'm very conscious of and careful about Jewish unity. So for instance, in our vision statement, when we propose that all forms of marriage be recognized by the state, not necessarily by the other religious groups, by the state, we say you choose the path at the beginning and you stick with that path. Namely, you choose to marry civilly, you may divorce civilly. You choose to marry in the rabbinate, you divorce in the rabbinate. You don't hop, you marry Orthodox and you divorce civilly because that's a prescription for mamzerut, for illegitimacy.
I understand. Well
So
done.
we are very concerned about issues of unity. We know that there is a halachic remedy if you choose reform or conservative or civil, because Orthodoxy in many responses has said, okay, as far as we are concerned, that's not a halachic wedding, and therefore there is no need for a halachic get. That's fine. There's a rabbinic phrase, kalkalatam hi takanatam. Their fault, namely their weakness, is their strength. The fact that we disregard reform marriages is really the solution. Because if we disregard reform marriages, we don't insist on there being, a religious get. There
What about
are
marriage?
solutions.
What about marriage?
What do you mean?
Do you want to accept, should the same be true for reform or conservative conversion?
Yeah.
And should the convert,
Yes.
converted by somebody reform
Yes.
or conservative, then be permitted in Israel
Yes.
to marry under the Rabbanut?
Forget about reform. It'll never happen. But I'm actually conceptually opposed to the approach that Rabbi Riskin and Rabbi Stav and others are trying to push.
Namely?
And Itim and Rabbi Farber. Namely, I believe in religious freedom. They attempt to pass a law that would say that, for instance, if Rabbi Stav performs a conversion, the rabbinic courts in Israel have to recognize that person as Jewish. Now, most rabbinic courts in Israel don't, just as they don't recognize Luxtins. I think it's the wrong approach to say the Knesset shall pass a law forcing the rabbinic court to go against its halachic beliefs and accept someone as a Jew whom they don't consider Jewish. I think that there is a systemic flaw here. There is a conceptual flaw here. What we need is religious freedom. We need to remove the monopoly of any rabbinic authority. We should make it voluntary. We should not force on any rabbinic courts to do something which is against their conscience.
Okay. There will be, as there is in America, and it's not always expressed this way, tiers of Judaism, T-I-E-R-S. There'll be a whole group of Israelis who will be in the non-Orthodox tier. They'll be converted by a non-Orthodox rabbi, and they'll get married by a non-Orthodox rabbi, because their conversion would always only be accepted by a non-Orthodox rabbi. Then there'll be the Orthodox tier.
No, it'll also be accepted by the State of Israel.
Yes, the State of Israel will accept both.
Correct.
And you and I want that very badly.
Correct.
But the problem we're going to create, using your format,
Yes.
is that there will be a non-Orthodox tier of Jews,
Yeah.
and there'll be an Orthodox tier of Jews. Why no?
Because at this point they already don't accept Riskin's or Luxtin's conversions. There isn't going to be an Orthodox tier. There are going to be fragments of Orthodox tiers. There'll be the Hasidic Ultra-Orthodox, there'll be the Lithuanian Ultra-Orthodox, there'll be the Chardali.
But all of these,
they will not accept each other.
yes, but in addition to not accepting each other,
They'll all not accept reform.
exactly right.
Okay, that's the nature of Jewish life.
Okay.
Now,
And-
here in America, that's the case.
Yes, in
And
the America, that's
have
correct.
you felt, we discussed before that you come to Israel and you don't feel that you are discriminated against.
Absolutely.
Have you felt that the Jewish community in America has somehow been torn into two peoples, three peoples, as some, doomsday prophets are suggesting will happen in Israel if, God forbid, we allow reform marriages? No.
You want American pluralism in Israel.
I want religious freedom and equality as promised under Israel's Declaration of Independence. I don't want to copy America to Israel.
Yes.
Israel is not America.
Okay, so don't use
We'll
America.
have our own version.
Don't quote America to me.
I'm just quoting the fact that this logic that we are going to see the Jewish people falling apart if,
I
God
didn't say that.
forbid,
All I did
recognize-
is I want
Yeah.
you, I want to acknowledge, and you did.
Yes.
I want the audience to understand
Yes.
what Uri Regev is suggesting is
But what-
there be, in essence, in a way that is not in America, two separate tiers of Jews.
There aren't going to be two.
Those, yes, because
Because conservative doesn't recognize all reform conversions either. There won't be two tiers. And it'll go back to Hillel and Shammai. The fascinating thing is that you find Hillel and Shammai arguing on issues involving personal status. And clearly, according to one, the children who are legitimate, according to the other, are mamzerim, are illegitimate. And yet they accorded each other chiba vereut, because they pursued ways of peace. So says the Talmud. Now, what did they do? How could they overcome that? Because they revealed, they were open, transparent to saying these are kosher according to our way. You may not approve of it. And that's how they coexisted, even though they had differences.
Okay, so normally Shammai is more machmir than
Yeah.
Hillel. He's stricter. And so in this issue, he has a somewhat stricter view of who is a Jew.
It's not an issue of who is a Jew. I'm not talking about the tractate Shabbat.
Then what are you talking about?
I'm talking about mamzerut. I'm
Yes.
talking about children
Who
of
become-
tzara.
Okay. And people should understand in the Jewish tradition, if one is a mamzer, one is not permitted to marry another Jew. One is only permitted to marry another mamzer.
Correct.
Unless it's a doubtful mamzer, then they're out of luck altogether. However, how did Hillel and Shammai practically resolve that issue?
The Tosfot says they just announced. They were just
No.
transparent.
In real life, how did it work?
Oh.
There was somebody whom the school of Shammai said was a mamzer.
Yeah.
Hillel said it was not a mamzer. This person
So
was
they
not a
had
mamzer.
lists.
Was that person allowed to marry or not?
Not according to the other school. There was no centralized government. There was no Ministry of Religious
So
Affairs.
once again, it was a communal decision.
You just go
If
to a
you-
rabbi that accepts you.
Exactly. Okay. All right.
But what I'm saying is Reform didn't invent it. This goes back to Hillel and Shammai. And by the way, the two methods of resolving conflicts go back to Hillel and Shammai. Because on the one hand, you see that they disagreed immensely and nevertheless were able to coexist because there was a level of respect and disclosure. On the other hand, you find this horrible passage in the Talmud that talks about the 18 issues that were decided according to Shammai, and this was, Talmidei Beit Shammai hayu horgim, Talmidei Beit Shammai hayu horgim betalmidei Beit Hillel. They were killing the others. That's what the Yerushalmi is saying. Terrible thing. What do the interpreters explain? What they explain is that there was a momentary majority in the room where they were contemplating those 18 issues. Momentary majority to Shammai, whereas usually Hillel had the majority. So the Shammai followers stood, and again I'm quoting, stood with swords and spears in their hand at the door and says, "He who is out is not going to come in. And if you dare come in, we'll kill you." And nobody came in. And they had the majority. And they said, "We vote now." Terrible way of resolving conflicts. And without the spears and swords, but with the analogous reality, the political reality of spears and swords, this is exactly what they are doing now. Rather than relate to the other whom you disagree with a level of respect and acceptance, and live with your differences, what they are trying is to use the modern political measure that equals spears and swords in order to force their way.
Israelis are permitting that to happen.
Yes, that's very true. We should get over the misguided conception that one cannot have a government without the Haredi parties, and the right of center should learn to come down from their high tree and work with the center and left of center together for the better interests of the Jewish people and the state of
Yeah,
Israel.
don't make it a right issue. The
It's not a right issue.
The
I'm
left,
saying,
no, the left
oh,
doesn't
the
want to
left
work
was
with,
no better.
Yes,
No
exactly
better.
right. That's the.
I agree
Okay.
fully. And I've written that repeatedly.
Yes.
There's no difference between left, center, and right. Each in their turn preferred to go with the Haredi party.
Good
And
for
you know why?
Good for you. Because?
Because the Haredi parties say the only price we exact is that. You have your economic philosophies. Gesundheit, gay Gesundheit. Rabbi Litzman, the leader of the Hasidic fact, recently said, there are things that don't interest us, such as security, international relations. On these issues, we do what Netanyahu asks us to do. But when it comes to issues that are important to us, we expect him to deliver.
Oh, wait, they have the right. They have that right.
Of course, as in any horse trading market.
Yes. What you're saying is the political system should be able to work without including that perspective
Correct.
in the governing coalition.
And that's what most Israelis want.
So as we come to the conclusion, I want you to take a step back and just, what's the message? And in that message, I want you to answer, from the time you and I sat last together to this time, has there been progress?
I would ask the audience to recommit to a shared vision of a Israel and the Jewish people that are united, that work in partnership towards attaining this vision of a Israel Jewish, democratic, and inclusive.
Yes.
And in the time since we met last,
Yes.
I think that there are mixed directions, mixed trends. On the one hand, the public is growingly supportive of those issues. A wonderful thing has happened here with HIDDUSH being able to work in collaboration with Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, Reconstructionist, Renewal, and secular, and unaffiliated, to create frameworks that go together and promote this joint vision of Israel as a Jewish democratic state. This is no longer Orthodox versus non-Orthodox. This is all of us together against those who want Israel to be a theocracy, who want to take Israel back to the darker ages. So in that sense, both Israelis and I think some in American Jewry have moved forward in embracing this vision. The politics, as you have said before, you know, Sadna de Arachadu, it's the same thing all over the world, and that leaves much to be desired.
You know, since we spoke, the compromise at the Western Wall fell apart.
Mhm.
Do you feel that you have made progress on the Israeli scene in the issue of Jewish freedom and Jewish pluralism? Or do you feel that there's been sort of that the Israeli hardcore Orthodox have been able to give you a setback in the work you're trying to do?
The only setbacks are in the political arena. Those setbacks have nothing to do with the wall. They are on all fronts. There has been setback in terms of drafting yeshiva students. There has been setback in terms of gender equality. There has been setbacks in terms of using public funds to fund the anti-Zionist, anti-democratic, educational, ultra-Orthodox system. So these setbacks are not focused on reform or the Kotel, and we would be very much mistaken if we see everything about Israel in the prism of our interests as Reform or Conservative Jews. We need to see the larger picture, and we need to recommit to the larger picture, understanding that our effectiveness is going to be greater when we identify that which we both, namely the American Jewish community and the Israeli Jewish community, share in common, rather than identify causes which Israelis support, as they do with the Kotel. But frankly, they don't care about. Interesting, you said before, you go to the Kotel and you don't feel discriminated. The average Israeli secular Jew feels that the Kotel has been hijacked. The tears of the paratroopers in '67 are gone. It's been kidnapped, and they have nothing to look for there. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy that is not aimed at Reform Judaism. It's aimed at a force that doesn't care about democracy, doesn't care about Jewish pluralism, doesn't care about Jewish unity, but wants to see Israel become a Torah state. I have admiration to many Haredi Jews. There are so many elements of their commitment, of their social justice work, etc. But their attempt to force their views on everybody else is just unacceptable. And as so long as we are not going to be able to overcome that, we all stand a risk of losing our partnership, losing our unity, and yes, losing Israel.
Mm-hmm. And the last point, again, I want you to make, from your perspective, as disappointing as the political situation may be as it applies to Jewish freedom in Israel, you're in no way suggesting that American Jewry should try to use money or political influence in Washington to force Israel to do what American Jews want?
God forbid. I think that the existence and the strength of the State of Israel supersedes anything else. Now, we may entertain different ideas as to what strengthens Israel, what is important for Israel's future. But the principle of it should be uniting us, not dividing us.
I adore you. And you're helping to unite us. And you take a lot of slings and arrows. I am so glad that you come here and get a chance to really speak. I'm disappointed you didn't have a sitting next to you. It'll happen one time. But in the meantime, kol tuv v'hatzlacha, you continue the good fight. You're fighting for all Jewry. You're not fighting for liberal Jewry, Reform, Conserved, whatever. No.
Yes.
You're fighting for the Jewish people. And I give you enormous credit, and I look up to you. And I hope whenever we can, you'll come here and we'll continue the conversation, and you'll continue to tell us where is progress being made and where is progress still needed. Kol tuv v'hatzlacha.
Toda rabba and l'chaim.
Thank you. Rabbi Uri Regev, President and CEO of HIDDUSH, the Israeli organization devoted to promoting Jewish pluralism and, as he explains, Jewish freedom in the state of Israel. By the way, I want to once again say, if there are anybody and any of you who are part of a mainstream Orthodox organization, this is Uri Regev. He's somebody who, if you have things that he should hear them here on L'chaim. I want Uri to have to answer to an Orthodox rabbi who has a different perspective than he does. So once again, I invite, whether you're part of the OU or RCA or Agudath Israel, if you would sit with Uri on L'chaim, please be in touch with me. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments you may have to any of the ideas expressed on this edition of L'chaim. Please email me, write me, post on our Facebook page, or tweet me. I always love reading your thoughts. And if you're someone who listens to podcasts, remember there's now a L'chaim podcast on iTunes, Google Play, wherever you listen to podcasts. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'chaim, my friends, to life.
L'chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please, indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, P.O. Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.